Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is a show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So today, we return to the campaign of 12 Trees, and our heroes have just picked up Prisoner Zero, also known as Vara, queen of the hoofed beasts of yore. And they have brought her all the way back to the house, and she has told them of another establishment that the cult of 12 Trees had called Fort Stormshot. And they decide that they need to go and investigate Fort Stormshot to find out just what their Uncle Bradford and his culty brothers and sisters were up to. Now, if you recall, when our heroes, Ludwig, Brindo, Markle, and Salen, ran into Redhorn, Redhorn's horn was covered in Emily's armor, a crystalline covering that enhanced magical things about whatever it was poured upon. It's based in a vial from alchemy. And when they fought Redhorn, Salen got a chest full of crystals after he was freaking impaled. And they decided that, now that we're back in town, we really should see to Salen's Tony Stark case here, because they healed him up. He's got full HP and all that, and his gaping wound has closed by Ludwig's paladin magic and by Brindo's magic potions. But to get all those crystals out is going to take... He's going to need to, go under the knife or something. And Salen is not real big on this. So they decide they're going to sleep on it, and that Salen will hopefully come to his senses over the night, because you remember, this is medieval Western Europe, so surgery is not a big thing that goes on. So he has a lot of debris in his chest cavity, pointed every which way towards his stomach, liver, lungs, heart. A bunch of it's caught on his ribs. It's not hurting him, but it's still in him, so it could be quite dangerous. So they all shack up for the night. They scatter out across the house. Vara goes to sleep in Annabelle's room, because no boys allowed, ha ha ha. But when they get up the next morning, or rather when Ludwig wakes up in the middle of the night, Salen has gone again. He goes, he's sleepwalking again? And of course they lean out of their rooms like Scooby-Doo style. They all lean out of their rooms, and they find that Salen has once again journeyed to the top of the stairs and is gently tapping his head against the wall, sleepwalking. And they're like, oh my god, we're gonna have to tie him to the bed or something. And they notice, because he's shirtless, he's in his pajama briefs or whatever, that the crystals that are inlaid in his skin, in his muscles and body, are glittering below the surface. They can see the pink magic coursing through him. And of course, anybody who's anybody knows that too much pink energy is dangerous. But it kind of solidifies with the party that, we really should see a doctor or a surgeon or a wizard surgeon or something like that. Brindo especially, because Brindo kind of became the quote-unquote healer of the group, because he made all the potions, and he called them healing high fives, because all he had to do was touch you. So he'd be like, high five, 6 health, high five, 18 health, stuff like that. It was kind of funny. But Brindo especially had a very high heal check, so he had a very high knowledge of physiology, not just plants, from being an alchemist and having the job alchemist. So once they, put Salen back to bed and morning came, they argued and argued and argued about what they should do with Salen and his, chest situation. So eventually they went into town looking for, a surgeon, a doctor, something like that was magically inclined, and I was like, I don't know if Dewhurst has one of those. So I rolled the fate check. 97 out of 100. So of course, there's a wizard surgeon doctor on the corner of First and Main. So they go visit this guy, and they pull off Salen's shirt, and he's like, look at this. This is what happened. Here's a sample of what's in him, and they give the guy the vial of Emily's armor so he can look it over. And he casts a couple of spells, and he consults some tomes, and he waves, the magic wand over him to see if he'll get any reaction, and he does. And he's like, are you in any pain? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? And just kind of like poke him and prod him and like bend his arm every which way. And Salen's sitting there on the examination table, completely fine, not in any pain. Even when the crystals seem to glow in response to other magic, he's not in any kind of pain. There's no heat or warmth or anything. Just a slight sparkle to him when he goes near a source of magic. And he's like, well, if you're not in horrible agony right now, and if it hasn't gone through any of your organs, in the past 24, 48 hours, however long it's been, they're probably not going to. So, I mean, we could put you under the knife, but given how many pieces there are and how deep inside you they are, the surgery would be more dangerous than leaving things as they were. Because if this is some sort of dormant condition or dormant malady that's covering you and it's not hurting you yet, it's probably not going to. And he examines the crystals in the vial a little closer, and he's like, these look almost like they would store magijewels. And they go, what are magijewels? And magijewels are like the units of energy that magic can be measured as mathematically. And I hear you guys rolling your eyes because, like, oh, metachlorians. Shut up. Magijewels is just like a way that I made up that you can measure magic, because there's a lot more magic in a fireball than there is in a mage hand, opening a door. And there has to be a way to measure that across all schools of magic. So I just called it magijewels. You could probably store magijewels in these crystals if you wanted to. They're no different than batteries, but they don't blow up or leak or grow or anything when they're exposed to magic. They just store it, almost like a vase of flowers. You can pour water and it'll just hold the water. So Salen's like, all right, it's not hurting me. It's not going to grow or dig into my organs. I vote no surgery. So, of course, Brindo steps in. No, this is bad. It's probably possessing you and making you walk around at night. Like, they're dead certain that whatever was possessing that Twilight Unicorn is now in Salen's body because of these crystals. But the doctor says no. So Salen's like, you know what? I'm going to not get my front cut open 90 different ways from Sunday. And they argue and they argue and they argue. And finally, Ludwig kind of leans over and is like, well, if Salen says no, quote unquote, it's his character, it's his body. If he doesn't want to go under the knife for this, we really can't make him. Sheriff Graham will be all over our asses for forcing him into unconsciousness and cutting him open. So, sign this form, son, says the doctor. You have a right to refuse medical attention. That's in anybody's God-given right. If you don't want to be helped in the medical way, you're not in any direct harm right now, so I don't blame you. I mean, if nothing else, it would just cover you with scars, whether you've got paladin magic or not, given how many of these things there are inside you. None of them are really big enough to do any harm. So Salen is okay with all these crystal bits inside him, but he will, glitter like a Twilight vampire whenever he is near a source of magic, and those crystals will kind of sop it in like a sponge, so we'll see where that leads. In the meantime, after more sleepwalking, and after figuring out that Salen is not going to die anytime soon, a la Tony Stark syndrome, they decide that they need to head for Fort Stormshot. So they buy more arrows. Brindo whips up more potions. They do their shopping. They level up, and of course Vara is going to come with them. So they've got a giant woman in their field. Vara has joined the party. Da 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 da. Sorry. But Annabelle makes them food so they don't have to eat any kind of trail jerky or anything like that. She makes them some proper meals and puts them in a basket for them so they can have that in their bags. And Vara says that she will lead the way. And they show her the map, but Vara's like, no, I've been asleep for 50 years, but, it's as though it were yesterday to me, so I will point the way. And Vara leads them on through the woods. Now, Fort Stormshot was another of the sort of landmarks that were written in on the map that they got from the Weeping Lion prison. There are statues and monuments all over the 12 Trees forest. Fort Stormshot is, it's supposed to be a big building, but nobody's ever heard of it. They don't know where that is. They ask around in town a little bit to see if this is like on a trail somewhere. No, nobody's ever heard of Fort Stormshot. What is that? But Vara is quite sure she knows where it is. And, they make the fate checks, and of course nothing harasses them out through the woods because Redhorn is already dead, and, the dire wolves have already been shown what for. So, it's not a forest full of apex predators. You can cross it without getting harassed. So they make it all the way to where Vara says Fort Stormshot is, and they find a big stone platform, like something you would see in like Dragon Ball Z, if you remember the World Martial Arts Tournament. It's just like a big square made of big stone tiles. It's like 200 feet across and 200 feet wide and like a foot tall off the ground. But it's completely featureless. There's nothing around it. Like, this is supposed to be a fort. There's nothing here. There's no walls. There's no building here. And Vara says, this is where it was, I promise you. And so they start searching around for a while, and eventually Ludwig finds another one of those bronze, like, lion's faces, much like the one they saw on the Weeping Lion prison. And he goes, I've got this one, and he, like, pulls up his magic ring, which has the glowing stone on it, and he's like, for the glory of 12 trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command. And the lion is like, the lion's face kind of rotates one way, and then it rotates the other way, and then it rotates halfway back like the dial on a safe, and then the ground begins to shake, and then like, what did you do? And out of the ground, like rising from like a missile silo or something, Fort Stormshot rises up out of the earth. And they're like, it was tucked away underground, and this fucking castle just comes up out of the ground before coming to a halt. So God knows how big the mechanism, how big the gears, or how much magic it takes to store a building underground and then by a password bring it back up to the surface. So this was very impressive. And of course, it's got towers, it's got curtain walls, it's got a main building, it's got a courtyard, it's got an outer courtyard, it's got all these rooms and doors and stuff hidden inside, and it's only got one entrance, one way in and one way out, not unlike a fort. So it's a defensible fort. It's Fort Stormshot. So if nobody's home, they would store it underground so nobody could break in and steal their shit or look through their culty, their 12 trees culty druid bullshit. They would just store the building underground, and you would need one of the 12 rings, or one of the 13 rings, and the password, and be related to one of the members of 12 Trees to get into this place. So it was a perfect security system. So Ludwig, who was related to Bradford 12 Trees, speaks the password, has the magic ring, fort comes up out of the ground, now they can go inside. And they look at Vara, and Vara's like, yes, this is it. This is where I scaled the walls and found the cult of 12 Trees, doing one of their magic rituals, charging a magic item or controlling the weather or whatever they were doing. I didn't stop to pay attention and let them finish their chant. Because if you remember, Vara killed 4 of them and injured Primus before she was captured or before she was, run off. So she's sticking around to make sure all of these people are dead before she goes home. So, they venture inside, and things instantly turn very interesting, because After having run through the Weeping Lion prison and seeing how dangerous places like this could be, Ludwig, our paladin of the old ways, or the druid paladin, whatever you want to call that, Ludwig gets it into his head that before they stop to examine anything, like papers, offices, books, ritual areas, anything that 12 Trees might have done, they need to clean the place out. Because, it's D&D, there's going to be monsters. But they're going into this old abandoned fort that's been underground for 50 years. Surely something evil has wormed its way in by now. And he doesn't want anybody to go anywhere into any dark corners until they have fought and killed everything in this place. And of course, he's a paladin. He has, detect evil. And he, points, he's like a radar gun. It detects basically the location of any and nature of anything evil within a certain radius. The only problem is, behind the DM's curtain, I was like, okay, how far does freaking detect evil go? Okay, it's 60 feet or it's 120 feet. If he faces that way and then faces that way, he has a radius of 120 feet. And I was like, well, gosh, he could just stand a couple of rooms in and scan the entire place and know exactly where all the monsters are. And I was like, well, fuck. And that's exactly what he does. And far be it from me to get on my players for being too clever, but I was a little bit salty. I was like, and I was talking to Ludwig later. I was like, Ludwig, if you turn yourself into a radar gun and you always know where all the monsters are, aren't you going to get bored? But, and that's a whole argument for another day, and I know you guys are going to comment on it in the comments. I don't care. It's already come and gone. But I basically drew up a grid. So I couldn't hand him the map. That would have sucked. But I basically drew up a grid because the fort was a perfect square. And I was like, okay, here's a monster, here's a monster, here's a monster, here's a monster. The sources of evil inside the fort all show up like fires. Like when you close your eyes and you can see the souls of your companions, because you're a paladin, you can do that. And their souls are represented by these small golden flames, or in Vara's case, a small golden fire, because she's much bigger. And you turn around this way and that in the fort, you can see these cold-looking, dark purple, dark blue flames inside. Those represent all the sources of evil inside. Not necessarily monsters, perhaps objects, perhaps places, because there is such a thing as unholy ground. But, he scanned the whole place from the front door. He's like, okay, we can't do anything until we've rooted out all this evil and we've, emptied the place out. So let's go! And he charges forward like his fucking hair is on fire. And it makes a good story, don't get me wrong. We were playing on Roll20, which I've told you about before. It's a digital tabletop, so I'm drawing rooms in MS Paint almost, but there's a grid that's already there. So I'm drawing these rooms, and he would look around for 4 seconds and then charge into the next door, and then look around for 4 seconds and then charge to the next door, beelining as fast as he fucking could to the nearest source of evil. Because we cannot do anything in this fort or in this dungeon until all the evil is gone. Only then will we do anything else. So he leaves Vara behind. He leaves Salen behind. He leaves Brendo behind. Markle, our ranger, can barely keep up with him. And he charges straight to the heart of the fort. And remember, this is a perfectly square building, so it was built with some symmetrical aesthetic. And I've got the map here actually, but he charges through a dining hall, and then a kitchen, and then a pantry, through some archives, down a hallway, through a leave your coat here kind of room, and he bursts through these double doors out into the central courtyard, which is, of course, diamond-shaped because it's a square-shaped building. And it's still the middle of the day, and he finds that there are 4 sources of evil in the middle of this courtyard, and he doesn't see anything. and I'm really hesitating because he has run through like half the damn map or a quarter of the damn map, beelining for the most powerful source of evil that he can find in this fort, left 3 or 4 party members behind. He shows up, he can't see what's evil. And then Markle arrives behind him, and Ludwig he turns on like his detect evil again. I was like, there's a source of evil directly in front of you, but you can't see it, Ludwig. And I was like, is there anything on the ground in front of me? Is there anything above me? Is there anything? And just, God, you'd think his fucking hair was on fire. He starts pulling up stones. No, there's no like cursed amulets under the stones or anything. And Markle comes in behind him, and he's like, don't worry, I have dust of revealing. And I was like, fuck. So Markle reaches into this bag, and he hands it over to Ludwig. Ludwig pulls out like this pixie dust kind of thing, and he throws it across like in front of himself where he detects this form of evil. And he forcefully conjures 4 ghosts. And if you know ghosts from Pathfinder, they are not to be fucked with. So in the middle of the day, in broad daylight, he forcefully summons 4 ghosts who are not happy because, they're invisible during the day. They're dormant. They're resting, or at least trying to. And he forces them out. They instantly turn on him and like reach out with their ghosty hands. I was like, roll initiative, I guess. You guys, there's a trail of party members maybe 200, 300 feet behind him. And like Ludwig and Markle are the only ones here. And there's 4 ghosts. They are like equal or higher to your level, and you forcefully summoned them. So good luck, fuckers. And you can guess who they were, obviously. Vara killed 4 members of 12 Trees. These are their ghosts. And if you know anything about ghost lore, people that are violently murdered or die in accidents or stuff, they make for some very, very angry ghosts. And if you know any of the rules that go with ghosts, you need a magic weapon to hit a ghost, or you need something with ghost touch on it so you can hit ethereal things. Markle is not able to hit the ghosts. Ludwig is, but they beat his ass. They beat his ass down. Salen, of course, comes out with the pistols. Boom, boom! Isn't able to hurt them either. And I was like, it's kind of down to Ludwig and Brendo, because Brendo's bombs are considered magical, I think. But it doesn't take the ghosts long to freaking slaughter Ludwig, and then Salen turns and runs when he sees the tank go down. And of course, ghosts can go through walls, so it doesn't take them long to just phase through the wall, grab Salen, and like their icy touch, their soul-draining touch is all it takes to smush the rogue. And Brendo's like, nope, and Markle's like, nope. And they run, they turn tail and they run past Vara, who's bringing up the rear because she's the biggest and has trouble getting through all the doors. And they're like, run, Vara, run! And they run past her, and Vara's like, what? She's got a brand new spear in her hand. She's like, what? She turns around, and these 4 dead ghosts of the people she killed come boiling out of the fucking brickwork, and she's like, oh my god! And she turns and runs with them, and they flee. They run as fast as they fucking can back through the kitchen, the pantry, the hallway, the sitting room, the dining room, out the front foyer, and straight out the front door, screaming into the tree line like the fucking hounds of hell are on their heels. And of course, being ghosts, they are attached to a certain location, so they can't leave the fort and chase them down and fucking kill them. Or they would have, trust me. But they take off running after Ludwig and Salen are both slain. So we are down 2 party members, and the ones that remain, they have 1 person that can hit ghosts left among them. And the ghosts stand there like looking horrible with big black eyes with white specks of light in the center, these horrific like long-jawed screaming wraiths things after them as they flee and scream into the tree line. It was like, Ludwig's dead. Salen's dead. You know, you forcefully conjured 4 ghosts in broad daylight, and they whipped your ass. and and I got on to Ludwig after that a little bit. I was like, that was really foolish. And like, I understood. I did. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like ragging on him for what he did, like wanting to clean the place out. I was ragging on him for how he did it. Like, he ran so far ahead of everybody else. Like, there's kind of a protocol that goes with going through dungeons. You know, the rogue and the tank usually work side by side. The rogue does all the traps and the doors, and the tank stands ready for anything that comes out of the woodwork to eat your face. Meanwhile, your other party members are usually nearby. No, Ludwig fucking charged through this place like I've never seen. In like 15 years of playing D&D, I've never seen somebody do that. Because, you know, it's a team sport. If you're the tank, not only are you the front of the group, but you're the group's protection, so you don't stray very far. You know, occasionally the rogue will go off on his own because he's sneaky, but, like, I've never seen a tank, like, abandon a party, like, 5 or 6 rooms separate from the rest of the party. I've never seen that before. But lesson learned, he certainly died for it. So there's a long silence, and they kind of scramble for what to do because Ludwig's dead and Salen's dead. They've got 2 extra horses, and they can't go back in and retrieve their bodies because fuck that. They've summoned a quartet of ghosts that will go through walls and drain your fucking soul out and all that good stuff. So what are we gonna do now? And Markle and Brindo and Vara are kind of there around the campfire. Like, once they've put a few miles between themselves and Fort Stormshot, they're like, what has happened? It happened so fast. You know, that went south so fast. And finally they get it into their heads that this actually can be fixed. Because, if you remember, back in the house, in the vault, in one of the wall safes, inside the jewelry box, they still have ring number 0, the wish ring. And Brindo kind of strokes his chin for a while. It's like, well, how do we fix this in one wish? It's like, we could bring Salen back to life, or we could bring Ludwig back to life. Because if you have a wish, at my table, at least, if you have a wish, you can't use the word and. Because that means you're getting more than one thing with your wish. So, you know, we wish Ludwig back to life. We could wish Salen back to life. How do we make it both? And they have, like, conjecture for a while, and they go, wait, what if we use the wish ring to, like, turn back time to the moment that we entered the fort with our memories? And I was like, that sounds like 2 wishes, but you didn't use the word and I felt kind of bad for killing half the party, but I was like, all right, but that's going to be the whole wish ring. There's no more after that. There's no getting it back. They're like, all right. So they make it all the way back to the house. They don't tell Annabelle what has happened because they're about to turn back time anyway. There's no reason for the drama. And Brindo goes upstairs, up into the office. He opens the safe in the wall behind the portrait, and he takes off one of his rings, and he puts on the wish ring. He's like, all right, I wish to turn back time to the moment that we entered Fort Stormshot with all of our memories intact. And, of course, the universe goes white, and time turns back, 2 or 3 days, however long it took them to get home, and they instantly pop back into existence. Ludwig's alive, Salen's alive, they've got all their arrows and their potions and all that has been completely restored, and they remember everything that happened. So Salen, the last thing Salen remembers is a ghost grabbing him by the face and sucking his soul out, and then suddenly he's at the front door, alive. And Ludwig, the last thing he saw was a ghost coming through the wall to, snap his fucking neck, and then collapsing to the ground and bleeding out. And now suddenly he's back at the entrance. So they've got this horrible, wrenched through reality moment where time dilation takes over for a few seconds and everybody's, air sick for a few moments. And they all kind of look at each other like, okay, let's not do that again. So they've turned back the clock. All the ghosts are back in the courtyard, invisible. Markle has his dust of revealing, or pixie dust or whatever it was, back, that reveals invisible objects or things. And they go, okay, let's not do that again, because clearly they are more than a match for us, and not all of us are toting magic weapons. So they decide they're going to go about this a little more cautiously, and they start to do a more like traditional dungeon crawl. So Ludwig is kept on a much shorter leash so that this doesn't happen again. And let me pull up the dungeon map so I can remember everything. So they come to find out that Fort Stormshot is sort of a research and development sort of place. It was a stone-walled, like a high-walled place with 4 towers, plenty of bedrooms for everybody that was in 12 Trees, and they find out everybody's name and what they kind of contributed to the cult. And I'm not going to go through all 13 of them, but the main 3 were Bradford, who was their uncle, who was the leader. He was number 0. Primus, who was number 1. He was the Weeping Lion, the warden of the Weeping Lion prison. And then Emily, who was their like research and development like scientist. She was doing alchemy stuff. She was making magic items. She was making magic armor, forging all these great weapons and other things for the protection and the aggression of the cult itself. So she was very important. And those 3 members were the most important, though there were 10 others who had contributions throughout. And as you imagine, because I modeled the house after like a point-and-click adventure where they could find like papers and shit to read, I put like letters and notes and facts and figures all over Fort Stormshot, and they just started like packing. They got like a binder. They just started packing papers into Brendo's bag. It's like, we could look at all this later and kind of sort it all out and see what it is. And I've got all those here, so don't worry, I'm actually going to read them to you, because they're actually very important, because they can't run into these people because they're long gone, as far as they know. And again, Vara killed 4 of them and mortally wounded Primus, but they're not sure about anybody else. But so far they've got like their mail and Emily's scientific development notes and like conjecture and like a lot of like scrolls and things that passed between these people to kind of paint a picture of what sort of people they were. And they go through like archives and like a library / lab kind of area. They find a ceremony circle that's got like runes written in Druidic, runes written in Sylvan, like stuff they can't read and they have no hope of reading because it's like a secret language. And then they get over to the more dangerous side of the fort, because as I said, Fort Stormshot was all about research and development, and that included live test subjects, some of which have survived the past 50 years in one way or another, down in Fort Stormshot, and that is not by staying in their cages. So there was actually like a small menagerie of monstrous things down in this fort, not only to give them things to fight, but to show them that like the research and development into the weapons and different things of 12 Trees were not only tested on animals, but powered by animals. They came across, I think that's the first one here, they came across Emily's like scientific notes that measured different magical creatures according to their Magijewel output. And we talked about that earlier, that Magijewels is how you like mathematically measure magic. And oh, it's metachlorians. Shut up. But it was basically a big long list that showed like, it was almost like Dragon Ball Z with like the scouters. It was like, what's your power level, human? Beep, 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 beep. Oh, it's 5. It's like, what Vegeta, what does it say about his power level? And it's like, it's 1006. What? Really? Yeah. Kick his ass, Nappa. They're like, oh, wait, it's upside down. It's over 9,000. Ah, you didn't do it right. Yes, I did, Nappa. Yes, I did. But, it's like all these different creatures that this Emily lady was experimenting on, like Manticore was worth 700 magijoules. An earth elemental was worth 1,100. A regular human being was worth about 90. We're low on the scale. Elves are worth 900. So the elves are measurably 10 times more magical than humans are. They had a wyvern, they had a small dragon, they had a fairy, a will-o-wisp, a kelpie, a griffin, a treant. They managed to capture a dragonborn somehow. And then in the middle of the list is a unicorn. And then next to it, it says, the bastard broke out, find him. And they're like, oh shit, the unicorn was actually here in Fort Stormshot. That's where Redhorn came from. Emily was experimenting on Redhorn, and he broke out because he was so powerful. Because next to Unicorn, it says 4,500 magijoules. So unicorns are way up there on the magijoule scale. And then they look at the very bottom, the last entry, the last magical beast on the list. It says Kirin. Kirin, if you don't know, are like horse, dragon, like it's hard to describe. They're like horse, dragon, goat, tree beard things that you might know a little lore, you might not. But as far as Pathfinder is concerned, Kirin are lesser air gods. They're like level 13. They can cast the wish spell. They cannot be contained without like an airtight prison of some description. Somehow 12 trees captured and contained a Kirin. And you remember our heroes are like level 7, level 8. I think they topped out the campaign at level 9 or level 10. Kirins are level 13, and 12 trees captured one alive. And next to it, of course, it says how many magijoules? 12,000. Far and away above dragons, far and away above unicorns, 12,000 magijoules. And of course it says holy shit next to it in somebody's handwriting. And it says, there's other little notes on it that says, magijoules must be proportionate to the affected area and the size of the containment unit. Remember to keep it airtight, from Bradford. And then next to that it says, Bradford, if I'm going to power this thing, I need something more potent than this random menagerie. Think bigger, from Emily. And then under it it says, Djinn, adult dragon, doppelganger, stuff like that. But they decided on a Kirin, and they somehow caught one. So whatever Emily is building, she's using a Kirin, a lesser air god, to power it. And the party members kind of look at each other like, what did she make? What does it say? And they're like, no, it doesn't really say anywhere what exactly she's making. But she has a battery that is alive and pissed off, no doubt. And it can cast the wish spell, and it didn't break out immediately. What the fuck did they use to contain it? Etc., etc. So this weird conspiracy is laying out that Emily, their research and development cultist, built some sort of super weapon and then used a Kirin to power it. So they work their way through the rest of this place, and they find what's left of the menagerie. They find like a dragon skeleton. They find the busted out remains of the unicorn cage. They find bits and bobs of like magical creatures that were either contained or eventually busted out at one point, much like Redhorn did. They also find human zombies, like a big group of them. And of course Ludwig has to step forward, holy arcane explosion, bah! And he sends a shockwave through the entire fucking fort that blows the zombies up because they've only got like 10 health apiece. But there's a big group of them, and he throws out a shockwave of holy magic, and there's like 12 or 13 of these things, and they just shatter and fall to pieces. But they are also infected with Emily's armor, much the same way Salen is. Like, is Salen going to turn into a zombie? Not according to the wizard, or the wizard surgeon doctor. He's like, I don't feel undead. And Brendo's like poking him in the side. You might be undead. I don't know. Stop that. Shut up. But apparently, looking at all the remains of the zombies and the small dragon and all the rest of the things that they found, Emily was using that like crystalline stuff, Emily's armor, to reinforce like the magijewels that they would give off. So if you had a human who's worth 90 magijewels, if you stuff them full of Emily's armor, or if you make them drink it and it crystallizes or whatever, and then suddenly they're worth 900 magijewels, that might be closer to how much they need to power this weapon, whatever it might be. So what happens if you take a Kirin and then encase it in an airtight containment facility or whatever it happens to be, made of Emily's armor? How much does that augment 12,000 magijewels? Well, we don't know. Apparently it was strong enough to contain it, especially since they're air gods, so you would need to make it airtight. But a lot of the implication is kind of spiraling out of control, that this was much, much bigger and more complicated than they thought it was going to be. So they're going through drawers, they're going through the half a dozen different bedrooms, through the towers, stuffing papers away. We'll read all this stuff later. Some of it just looks like receipts for like groceries, raw materials, small magical objects that they need for different things. A silver rod here, 5,000 gold worth of diamonds there, rare herbs, all kinds of things. No doubt Emily was experimenting with all different stuff. But she landed on Kirin and then decided to use that to power whatever she was building. And they're going through the menagerie, and of course the menagerie itself had a guardian, which was, I think, like a greater wood elemental. Basically, a greater wood golem. So a bunch of trees got cut down and molded out into this big monster, and if anything broke out of its cage, this wood golem would come charging down the hallway and either subdue it or kill it. So either Redhorn broke out of a side wall or something, or the golem was added at a later date. But a wood golem hears them coming, and it's still alive because it's a golem, and it comes charging down the fucking hallway, and they have a proper boss battle. Wood golems are very interesting, not only because, well, hey, they're made of wood, they can take fire damage, so Brendo's like, yeah, Molotov cocktail, brah. Or no, Brendo wasn't there, because they kept getting separated. God. Brendo decided he was going to write down all the Sylvan and all the Druidic out in the courtyards. Of course, they couldn't translate it, because those are both, like, secret languages. But, Ludwig and Salen and Markle run into this wood golem, and of course, it can spray splinters, like in all directions. Like, it just throws its arms out, like, praise the sun, rah! And it just sprays splinters and bits of wood in all directions. It's worse than, like, a small dragon's breath weapon, because it goes in all directions. And of course Ludwig's going, oh, smite per day, boom! And they cut it in half. So it becomes two wood golems, and it gets up again to keep fighting them. Ah, crap. So Markle's shooting in there, Salen's got his guns, boom, 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 trying to stay back, while Ludwig's tanking his little heart out. And finally they break it down into enough pieces that it doesn't chase them anymore, but it was a big fight in a relatively small hallway to take it. And it's just like the guy from Karazhan. Those of you that played World of Warcraft, the menagerie is for guests only. It's that guy, but made of wood. But yeah, they came across the human zombie cage, the small dragon cage, the unicorn cage that got busted out. All the places where they were keeping these magical beasts so that Emily could measure them and see if they had the proper amount of magijoules to power whatever it was that she was building. And in all eventuality, they found out that there was one other thing alive in Fort Stormshot, and it was a manticore. Like a big lion with wings and a scorpion tail. And that's, again, kind of like a boss monster. It's not to be screwed with. And they find it at the top of one of the towers, one of the 4 lookout towers that are in the corners of the fort. And Vara is the only one who dares stand against it, because the poison of a manticore really sucks. It stat drains, it can knock you out, it can kill you. Plus it's got teeth, plus it's got claws. Our heroes were kind of frightened of this beast. Vara the Amazon, though, not so much. She had a big spear. She was a warrior. She would fight this fucking thing. And being large, I think her damage was like a 3d8 or something outrageous, because she was a large creature. But she does battle with this manticore at the top of this tower while Ludwig, our tank, runs down the stairs to try and regroup with the rest of the group. Vara will not turn tail and run. She will fight now, thank you very much. And she ends up slaying the beast and throwing it off the fort walls. And the whole place kind of goes silent, and they're like, "Are there any other sources of evil here, Ludwig?" And he scans around, because the zombies are gone, the golem's gone, the manticore's gone. The ghosts are still there, but they're not going to fuck with them. They feel like they've been to every room. So they're going to take all this big stack of papers that they got that no doubt has a ton of information for them, back to the house and kind of see what's going on. Because they got a new map, they got all these papers and scientific notes. They need to go through all this stuff and find out just what 12 Trees was up to and what sort of gigantic weapon that Emily was building for the cult of 12 Trees. And that is where we will stop for today. So I will I already have the notes and the letters and stuff that they picked up right here in front of me. We didn't quite get to those. We'll get to them next time when our heroes go through all these old letters and scientific notes and things like that. What was Emily building? Well, we'll find out pretty soon. So, until next time, I will see you guys on the next D&D Stories. Keep gaming. Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!